The Galactic Jail was an eerie, silent facility orbiting a dying red star. Its cold, metallic corridors echoed faint whispers of prisoners who had long since been forgotten. This was where the galaxy sent its most dangerous criminals, a place for those deemed too volatile for even the most secure planetary cells. In Cell Block Delta, the atmosphere was tense. A new inmate, a towering, reptilian alien from the Zyltherian Empire named Vrax, had been thrown into a shared cell with a single human, a Deathworlder. Deathworlders had a fearsome reputation among the galactic community. They came from planets so hostile that survival required both cunning and ruthlessness. Vrax, however, was unimpressed. He sneered as he observed the human sitting calmly in the corner of their cell, arms crossed, looking as if he were meditating. "You," Vrax growled, his deep, guttural voice reverberating through the cell. "You are the infamous Deathworlder? You don't look like much. Tell me, human, is it true that your kind thrives on chaos and destruction?" The human slowly opened his eyes. He was lean, with sharp features and a relaxed posture that belied a strength honed by surviving one of the deadliest planets in the galaxy. He regarded Vrax with an expression that was equal parts amusement and boredom. "I'm just trying to enjoy some peace and quiet," the human replied, his voice calm and measured. "Let's not make this harder than it needs to be." Vrax laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Harder? For you, maybe. I'm Zyltherian. I've crushed beings twice your size under my claws. You're nothing but a weak, hairless ape. You should bow before me." The human sighed, standing up and stretching, his movements unhurried. "You know, you really shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but if you're so eager to test your luck." Before Vrax could respond, the human moved. He didn't charge or roar, he simply blurred into motion, closing the distance in a heartbeat. Vrax's massive frame hit the floor with a resounding crash before he even realized what had happened. The human stood over him, one foot pinning the alien's tail, a hand gripping his neck with a vice-like strength. The human's eyes gleamed with an intensity that made Vrax's blood run cold. "Here's the thing about us Deathworlders," the human said, his voice still calm but now carrying an edge that cut deeper than any blade. "We don't just survive chaos, we are the chaos." Vrax struggled, his claws scrabbling against the floor, but the human's grip was unyielding. "Now," the human continued, leaning in closer, "we can either coexist peacefully in this cell, or you can keep testing me, but I promise you, the outcome won't be pleasant for you." Vrax nodded frantically, his arrogance shattered. The human released him, and he scrambled to the far corner of the cell, avoiding eye contact. From that day forward, Vrax never so much as growled at the human again. The rest of the cell block quickly learned about the incident, and the Deathworlder's quiet reputation grew even more fearsome. As for the human, he simply sat back in his corner, closed his eyes, and returned to his peaceful meditation. The tension in Cell Block Delta had shifted entirely. Whispers spread among the inmates like wildfire, recounting how the Deathworlder had subdued the mighty Zyltherian without breaking a sweat. Most of the prisoners avoided even looking in the human's direction, fearful of earning his ire. Even the guards treated him differently. Instead of their usual smugness, they walked with a cautious respect around the human's cell, mindful not to provoke him. Vrax, once the self-proclaimed alpha of the cell block, now spent his days in quiet submission. He stuck to his corner, occasionally glancing at the human with a mix of fear and resentment. The shame of his defeat weighed heavily, but deep down, he knew he had brought it upon himself. Days turned into weeks, and the human, whose name was Marcus, became an enigma. He rarely spoke unless spoken to, and even then, his responses were measured and cryptic. For someone with such an intimidating reputation, Marcus was surprisingly unassuming. He exercised methodically, meditated frequently, and seemed utterly indifferent to the chaos around him. That is, until one fateful day. An alarm blared through the facility, the lights flickering as a deep, synthetic voice announced over the intercom. "Warning, containment breach in Cell Block Delta, all personnel, initiate lockdown procedures." The prisoners exchanged uneasy glances, and some began banging on their cell doors in panic. The sound of heavy, metallic footsteps echoed down the corridor, accompanied by the inhuman growls of something unnatural. The guards were nowhere to be seen. Marcus stood up, his calm demeanor unchanged. Vrax, trembling, finally broke the silence. "What's going on?" he stammered. "Sounds like something broke in, or out," Marcus replied, cracking his knuckles. Either way, it's not here to make friends. The creature came into view moments later, a hulking, biomechanical monstrosity with glowing red eyes and razor-sharp appendages. Its armor-like exoskeleton glistened under the dim lights, and it let out a guttural roar that rattled the walls. The other prisoners screamed and retreated to the backs of their cells, but Marcus didn't flinch. Instead, he stepped closer to the bars, studying the creature like a scientist examining a curious specimen. The monstrosity stopped in front of their cell, its gaze locking onto Marcus. "You," it hissed in a voice that sounded like grinding metal, "the Deathworlder, you will be my first prey." Marcus smirked. First mistake. Before the creature could react, Marcus grabbed the bars of the cell and yanked. The reinforced metal groaned in protest before snapping apart like twigs. The prisoners gasped. Even Vax, who had witnessed Marcus's strength firsthand, was in awe. The creature lunged, its bladed appendages slicing through the air, but Marcus sidestepped effortlessly, his movements fluid and precise. He countered with a single, devastating punch to the creature's midsection, sending it crashing into the wall with enough force to leave a dent. It shrieked, its armor cracking, and charged again, but Marcus was relentless. He ducked under its wings, landed a kick that shattered one of its legs, and tore off a blade from its arm to use against it. The fight was over in seconds. The once terrifying creature lay in a broken heap on the floor, sparks flying from its damaged body. Marcus turned to the other prisoners, his expression as calm as ever. "Anyone else want to cause problems?" he asked, his voice carrying an almost playful tone. The silence was absolute. Even Vrax nodded vigorously, as if to say, "Not me, boss." Moments later, the guards arrived, weapons drawn. They froze at the sight of the destroyed creature and Marcus standing over it, unscathed. The warden, a wiry Etherian with a perpetually sour expression, appeared behind them. He surveyed the scene, his mandibles clicking in disbelief. "What in the name of the void happened here?" he demanded. "Containment breach," Marcus said casually. "Handled it." The warden stared at him, then at the remains of the creature, before finally muttering, "We're moving him to solitary." As the guards escorted Marcus away, the prisoners exchanged looks. Solitary confinement was supposed to be a punishment, but for someone like Marcus, it felt more like a vacation. And in the quiet aftermath, a single thought resonated among everyone in Cell Block Delta. Never mess with the Deathworlder. Solitary confinement was a cold, featureless cell buried deep within the facility. Its walls were reinforced with layered alloys, designed to withstand anything short of a small-scale explosion. For most inmates, it was a psychological torture chamber, a place where isolation gnawed at their sanity. For Marcus, it was peaceful. He sat cross-legged on the hard floor, his eyes closed, breathing in a slow, meditative rhythm. The incident with the biomechanical creature had only cemented his reputation, but he wasn't here for fame. He had a plan, and every step was calculated. Above him, hidden cameras buzzed faintly as they monitored his every move. The guards stationed outside his cell whispered nervously to each other. None of them wanted to be the one to face him if something went wrong. But something was about to go very, very wrong, not for Marcus, but for the facility. In the control room, the warden paced nervously. The containment breach had rattled him more than he cared to admit. That creature wasn't supposed to fail. It had been a secret weapon, a living deterrent against prison uprisings. "What did you learn from the logs?" he snapped at one of the technicians. The technician, a pale, insectoid Phyrexian, adjusted his visor nervously. "The Deathworlder dismantled it in under 15 seconds, sir. We've never seen anything like it. His combat efficiency is off the charts." The warden slammed a clawed hand on the console. "This is unacceptable. He's a liability. Send word to Central Command. I want authorization to terminate him immediately." The technician hesitated. "Sir, we received an encrypted message from Central Command just now. They don't want him terminated, they want him transported." "Transported?" The warden's mandibles clicked in agitation. "To where?" The technician swallowed hard. "They didn't specify, just that he's too valuable to be left here." The warden cursed under his breath. He hated being a pawn in the larger game of galactic politics, but orders were orders. Back in his solitary cell, Marcus cracked one eye open. He'd overheard the faint hum of encrypted transmissions, a sound most would miss, but not him. His hearing, like everything else about him, was finely tuned for survival. He smiled faintly. They're making their move, finally. The transport team arrived within the hour, an elite unit clad in advanced armor, armed with weapons designed to subdue even the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. They approached Marcus's cell cautiously, their leader barking orders to cover all angles. Marcus stood as they opened the door, raising his hands in mock surrender. "Gentlemen, no need for the theatrics, I'll come quietly." The leader, a burly Cordaxian, snorted, "Don't try anything funny, human, you're not as invincible as you think." Marcus chuckled, "Oh, I wouldn't dream of it." The team escorted him through the winding corridors of the facility, their weapons trained on him at all times. Marcus walked calmly, his sharp eyes taking in every detail, the layout, the guard rotations, the escape routes. They reached the hangar, where a sleek, black transport ship awaited. Marcus was ushered aboard, his restraints checked multiple times. The moment the ship's doors sealed, it launched into the void, leaving the prison behind. The leader of the escort team sat across from Marcus, his weapon resting on his knee. "You've got quite the reputation, Deathworlder. Central Command must think you're worth something. What's your secret?" Marcus leaned back, his expression unreadable. "Survival, adaptation, and knowing when to play the long game." The Cordaxian frowned. "What does that mean?" Before Marcus could answer, the ship jolted violently, the lights flickered, and alarms blared. "Report," the leader shouted into his comms. A panicked voice crackled back, "We're under attack. Unknown vessels just dropped out of hyperspace. They're targeting us." Marcus smiled faintly as he felt the ship shudder under the impact of enemy fire. The Cordaxian turned to him, his weapon raised. "What did you do?" Marcus shrugged. "Nothing, but you're about to learn why it's a bad idea to transport a Deathworlder without asking the right questions." As chaos erupted around him, Marcus's calm demeanor remained unshaken. This was all part of the plan.